handle this. Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? Super. Good evening. Good evening. I'd like to thank Aubrey McFarland and KDC for inviting me to their spring gala and giving me the opportunity to speak with all of you tonight. Being part of this video has brought me back to the early days when Jordan was first diagnosed with autism 11 years ago. I remember it like it was yesterday. We were sitting in the neurology department at Floating Hospital for Children, and I was seated across from a neurologist, and he had just told me that my son has autism. Jordan had autism. And I asked, why do you believe that? What brings you to that diagnosis? And she replied, his behaviors are consistent with autism. So I asked, why does he have these behaviors? What's causing these behaviors? And she replied, I believe he has these behaviors because he has autism. And I told her that that was the most circular explanation that I'd ever heard. And could she explain it another way, because it was very confusing to me. And she looked at me full of sympathy, and she said, well, that's autism. It's confusing to all of us. She said that if any one person or group of people could understand autism, then they would surely be a Nobel Prize winner. So I talked with her a little bit more, and I left Floating Hospital that day with my son, our new diagnosis, and a lot to think about. As I had time to process the information, I thought, okay, if Jordan has autism because he has these behaviors, and he has these behaviors because he has autism, well, I'll just get rid of the behaviors, and the autism will go away. This is going to be easier than I thought. Maybe I'll even win that Nobel Prize. It was simple. But that was me oversimplifying. I was very naive back then. And I've learned a lot since that time in my life. But one thing that held true, and one thing that continues to hold true today, is that if I change the behaviors, then I can change the way that autism disables my son. And that's what I set out to do all those years ago. And one of the first steps in that direction is to learn about and understand the concepts and principles of applied behavioral analysis. Those of us in the world of autism refer to those concepts as ABA. I believe that anybody that has any connection to autism or to education has at least heard of ABA. One of the first things that ABA taught me was to rethink the word behavior. I thought the behaviors was the spinning that Jordan did, or the way he flapped his hands, or the odd things about him. But I was wrong. In the world of ABA, those odd behaviors that Jordan engaged in isn't what they're talking about. The behaviors that ABA targets are much broader than that. In the beginning, Jordan had very little capacity to learn. He had very little capacity to understand the world around him and how he connected to that world. So we started early intervention, and one of the first tasks that the early intervention provider focused on was to teach Jordan how to communicate. Back then, he was nonverbal. So they taught him to communicate using pictures. They taught him to hand a picture of a toy to the provider, and in return, he would get the toy. And that was his first connection to the world around him. Give a person a picture, and get the toy in the picture. He began to connect the dots. He understood. He quickly went from 5 pictures to 20 pictures, to a whole binder of pictures. He was connecting to his world, he was learning, and it was truly amazing. After early intervention, Jordan went on to attend Pathways Strategic Teaching Center, a school that teaches children with autism using the principles of ABA. And once we found a way to use ABA to teach Jordan how to learn, I wanted to teach him how to speak. So I found a speech therapist. She conducted some evaluations on him, and she sat us down to talk. That day she told me that she believed that Jordan didn't, and most likely wouldn't have the ability to communicate verbally. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know this is upsetting," she said. "I don't like delivering this news to parents." I sat across from her, but I wasn't upset, because I knew she was wrong. I had already seen Jordan go from a child who didn't have the capacity to learn to being a child who could learn and was learning. I knew that Jordan could go from being a child that couldn't speak to one that could speak. So I left the speech therapist's office that day, and I started pounding the pavement in search of somebody that could help me. And I found her at Hasbro Children's Hospital. She was a speech therapist by the name of Sandra. And although she didn't specialize in autism at the time, she had a very special interest in it. In fact, she had done her master's training at an ABA school. So Sandra started working with Jordan, along with his teaching staff at Pathways and his speech therapist at Pathways. And with ABA and traditional speech therapy, Jordan was speaking in 6 months. Today, Sandra still works at Hasbro Children's Hospital, and she specializes in teaching children with autism to speak and to communicate. And today, Jordan talks so much that we had to teach him the phrase, "Excuse me, Mom," because he interrupts me all day long with his chatter and his questions. Eventually, it became time to teach Jordan how to read. There was a popular program that taught children with autism how to read by memorizing. And I knew that I didn't want that for Jordan. I didn't want 1,000 words floating around in his head. What happened when he came across a new word? Then it would be 1,001, 1,002. It's not what I wanted for him. It wasn't right for us. So I sat down with his teacher, Lori, and his ABA specialist, Erin, to talk about a reading program. Typical children learn how to read by decoding, by sounding words out. We already knew that Jordan, like many children with autism, could learn how to read by memorizing. But we didn't know if he could learn how to read by decoding, and we wouldn't know if we didn't try. So now it was Lori's turn to pound the pavement and find a program that would help us. And she did. She found a program that is used in schools across the country to teach typical children how to read by decoding. She began to teach that program using the principles of ABA. And to Lori's surprise, amazement, and absolute joy, Jordan started reading almost immediately. He was the first child in his school to learn how to read like a typical student. It was such a success that today, Pathways has an entire classroom devoted to teaching children to read in that approach. And the experience had such an impact on Lori that she went on to further her education. And today, she still works for Pathways, not just as a teacher, but as a certified reading consultant. And today, Jordan has such a passion for reading that he has a bookcase full of encyclopedias that he reads day in and day out. Last year, Jordan integrated into a 7th grade pre-algebra class at his local middle school. With some minimal teaching and the concepts of ABA, he became a whiz. And he learned pre-algebra alongside of his 7th grade peers. His phys ed teacher used ABA to teach him how to play basketball. His occupational therapist is currently running a typing program. He's up to about 35 words a minute. This year, I hope to teach him how to swim, and I'm working with our local health club. They have a swim teacher on staff that works during the school year in a special education classroom. So over the years, the word behavior took on a new meaning for me. Learning, speaking, understanding mathematics, recreational activities. Those are the behaviors that we built in Jordan and that we'll continue to build in Jordan. I was asked what I thought of KDC launching a program that brings ABA services to individuals, and that answer is easy for me. I applaud their efforts. I'm excited for you. I believe that KDC will be bringing an invaluable service to individuals and their families. I'd like to talk a little bit about the services that ABA has brought to my family over the years. Jordan receives services through the Family Support Center in the Milford office. And for those of you that might not know, the Family Support Center offers vacation camps for children, support groups for parents, respite programs, and many, many other services. The heart of those services for my family has been respite care. Jordan and I started using respite care when he was about 5 years old, long before I heard of KDC. We had a couple of providers here and there. They would come into my home, they would take him out to the playground, maybe Chuck E. Cheese, out to get something to eat, and it was okay. He seemed to come home happy. But I felt like something was missing. I didn't feel that break that other parents talk about. In fact, it was quite the opposite. So I spoke to Amy Boone, our service coordinator at the Department of Developmental Services, about how I was feeling, and she said, "Phyllis, you're not using it right." I said, "What are you talking about, Amy? They come pick Jordan up, they leave, they come back, what am I doing wrong?" She said, "You're not letting go. You're not letting somebody else be responsible for Jordan while they're in his care." And she was right. Some time went by, and out of the blue, Amy called me and she said, "I have a new respite provider that I want you to meet." She said her name is Anne Marie Rivers, and she works for a company called KDC, and she's perfect for you and Jordan. And I replied, "I don't know, Amy. I'm not sure Jordan and I cut out for this whole respite thing. It hasn't worked so far, and I don't know how to meet somebody new." But Amy wasn't going to give up. She said, "Give her a try, Phyllis. Just meet her, Phyllis." She said, "I know Anne Marie personally, and she's going to change your life." So 7.5 years ago, Anne came walking into my home for the first time, full of smiles and warmth and kindness, and all of these things that anybody who has had the pleasure to meet her can see almost immediately. She watched my son play, very obvious taken with him. She talked about her husband, Stephen, and her 3-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, and her newborn son, William. She told me about growing up in a home with a mother who provided services to children with special needs, and how she had devoted her career to this world. She told me that she and Stephen both worked in this industry full time, and they had their entire adult lives. There was something about the way that she watched Jordan play that night, about her smile, about something in her eyes. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, and I couldn't put it into words, but I knew that when Jordan was in her care, he'd be okay. So I gave Anne and Steve a try. They took Jordan into their home. 3-year-old Elizabeth is taken with Jordan as her mother was. In fact, she was like a little mother to him back then. And at age 10, she still mothers him. And little William, even when he was young, would look up at Jordan with curiosity and interest and quiet patience. And at age 7, he still does. Over the years, Ann and Steve's family grew and Jordan grew with them. 4 years ago, their daughter Vanessa was born, and Jordan adored her, his baby Nessa. And her family and friends call her that today, Nessa, the name Jordan gave her. Ann and Steve continued to provide respite for Jordan for 7 years. His respite family, that's what we call her. What started off 7 years ago as a break for Jordan's mother quickly turned into a break for Jordan. And over the years, the Rivers home turned into a second home for Jordan. A place where he had a sister and a brother and a baby. A place where he reads books with Elizabeth and he watches Williams T-ball games with the rest of the family. A place where he paints and he colors with his adored little Vanessa. My mind is full of stories about those years that Jordan spent with the Rivers family. But one story that stands out happened about a year ago. Steve came by to pick up Jordan one Saturday afternoon, and he had all 3 children with him, waiting outside the minivan. And Jordan bounced past Steve, out the door, down the stairs. So I went to the window because I wanted to make sure he made it there safely. As I stood at the window, I watched the children yank open the door to the minivan, and I started yelling, "Jordan! Jordan, yay, Jordan's here, Jordan's here!" And I remember standing there thinking, wow, they are thrilled to see him. They are as excited to see Jordan as he is to see them. And I remember thinking, these children, they accept him. In fact, they value him and the time that they spend with him. There is no greater gift for a parent than to have your child accepted and valued by their community. After that day, I started thinking about the word integration and what it meant to me. Webster defines integration as to blend, to unite, and I agree. Integration isn't just teaching our loved ones how to function in the community. It's much more than that. It's more than teaching them to shop at the local grocery store or to purchase stamps at the local post office. It's more than teaching them how to do pre-algebra alongside their peers. It's this. It's the Rivers children being overjoyed to see my son and spend time with him. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Isn't that what we strive for? It's having our loved ones accepted and valued by their community. That is true integration. And that's what Kennedy-Donovan Center has brought to my family. Someone once told me that Jordan was blessed to have a mother like me. I don't see it that way. I feel blessed to have a child like him. He has opened my life to so many experiences that I would not have otherwise had, and to people that I would not have otherwise met. Like some of you in this room tonight, who opened their lives and their hearts to families like me and Jordan. You are truly remarkable people. Every time you walk into work, you touch lives in ways that some of us can only dream about. Being on this journey with Jordan over the years is my own personal. Before I leave the stage tonight, I just want to acknowledge that Ann and Steve Rivers, the parents of these amazing children, are celebrating with us tonight. And I just want to give them a special thank you. Although I tell them on a regular basis how much I appreciate them, I want you to know that Jordan has a better life because you and your children have been part of it. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I'd like once again to thank KDC for inviting me here tonight to celebrate with all of you, and for giving me the opportunity to share my story. Thank you for listening. Phyllis, could I ask you to come back up? There's not really much that I have to say other than thank you so much, and thank you to Anne Marie and Steve as well. Thank you to Phyllis, and now I would like to introduce Joe Helbig, our fundraising chair and board